I'm Love Coach Scott Thomas, and it's Straight Talk with both Trish and Roxy tonight, which makes it very, very special. For any of you who don't know, in the beginning there was Roxy, and it was good. Um, Roxy and I started the show together, and then she had only committed to 6 weeks. She was very clear about that. And Trish came in for like last 2 or 3 weeks, and Trish and I have taken off and run with it. And actually, starting next week, we're gonna have a slight title change. It's going to be Straight Talk for the Global Peace Tribe, as it's been kind of an offshoot of the Saturday Night Live for the Global Peace Tribe project and program. But I'm not going to talk that much tonight because we're talking about sex. I ain't had none for a while. So we're going to have to let the ladies who have, I think I do remember what it's like. But this was actually inspired by Roxanne. And so I'm going to put the spotlight on Roxy for a minute. And what would you like to share? Because there's a beautiful quote which we put into our flyer that is really what became the inspiration for this, all about presence and your greater awareness of presence. So, Roxy, what do you want to share?
Well, thanks for having me on your show, first of all. And what I want to share, I had just gotten back. I started a lovership about last year. And I noticed as it started to deepen, the past few times that this person has left to go back home, and I'm being anonymous with them on purpose, or the past few times that I left their place to come back to my home, I had a hard time being present with my lover here, who's been a long-term partner of mine, whose name I'll leave out of this because they're very private. And I realized that in order for me to really deeply expand my heart to be able to really deeply love these two people, that I need to ground back down into my presence. And I've been doing open relationship very successfully, very healthfully for almost a decade now, which I know for some people is nothing, but for some people it's a lot. And it's a substantial amount of time. And I've had, I had 2 long-term girlfriends. I had a girlfriend for 8 years. For the duration of this, I have a husband of a decade, and I had another girlfriend for 6 years. And I've had, lovers in between them. And somehow I was always able to stay present in the midst of that. But there is something qualitatively different about this new relationship that I have with this man. It's a man. I currently have 2 men in my life. One I've been with for a long time, and then the other one is this new man. And I noticed I was coming home, and I just thought, I'm not with my other man across the country, and I'm not at home with my man here. I'm just sad, missing my lover. And I thought, shit, I have to really be present. So that way, when whoever I'm with, I can be present with them in the moment while still appreciating, as Scott says, the beauty of the longing, which I love that you say that, Scott. It's so sweet. So I don't know how much you want me to share right now, but that was the impetus for my presence conversation, that in order to love more than one person, one has to be really present. Otherwise, I was just arguing with reality. I was wanting to be across the country when I was in California. So
yeah, I do want to ask you one more question, and we'll throw something Trish's way. Honestly, because I know you and I know your husband, you two have done polyamory remarkably well. And as you know, I've coached dozens and dozens of couples and families, and very few are able to do polyamory without there being casualties. And it's remarkable how you two have done it. And so, again, without naming any names, how does your husband manage his feelings as you have a growing bond with someone else? Especially, I think it's for most men harder when their woman or the woman they're in primary relationship with is getting involved with another man. It's easier when it's a woman, right? I think just the way that most of us think, you know.
I think it's easier when it's a woman if it's casual. But once it gets into a deep relationship, it doesn't be, I don't think it's easier, especially when, you know, my husband wasn't involved in, you know, I had a girlfriend for 8 years, Kamala Devi, and he wasn't with us on our Friday dates. We very much had our own relationship. And so, but I was new to all of it. You know, it took me a decade to really get my bearings on for me to actually, I don't know how to say this without, it's hard to say it because I loved my girlfriend Kamala Devi a lot. We have a really deep bond, a really deep connection, and you know, we're very attracted to each other. We're broken up now. We've transitioned into something else. I don't quite know what we are right now. But the way that I feel about this other man is it's much more like a primary relationship feeling. And again, I don't like the word primaries or secondaries for me personally, because it denotes a hierarchy. And it's, for me, it's not about that. And the where my husband and I are at in our relationship, it's not about a hierarchy. You know, he has a long-term partner, and if she went into the hospital and I went into the hospital at the same time, he wouldn't come to me first just because I'm his wife and I'm his primary. He would go to whoever has the most need, right? Like if I had a broken arm and she had a ruptured spleen, of course he's going to go to the ruptured spleen first because that's much more of an emergency. His work is, you know, he's very, very busy. When we first got together in the beginning of our relationship, he said, if this was in the first week of us dating a decade ago, he said, if you want to just know that you're always going to be second to my work, because the work that he does in the world is his dharma. And I said, I'll sign up for that. I don't need to be your first and most important thing. So his work is his primary relationship, actually. And he also said, I'm going to get a lot busier as time goes on. And so this is kind of par for the course of, I'm a very human animal, and I love animaling and humaning with other humans. He's not so much. And it's just the different natures that we are. And so because I had two girlfriends for most of this past decade, I had other animals to human with. And, you know, we've been broken up for, you know, it's been about 2 years since it was on the decline, but we've been broken up for about 2 years, both of them. There was this vacuum that was created where I was getting a lot of my human needs met from these people. And now I can totally be alone. I'm very secure with myself. It's not coming from a needy place. It's just, I like to human. Yeah. I like to run with people. I like to eat with people. I like to cook with people. And my husband and my schedule is so opposite, so polar opposite. You know, I go to bed when he wakes up and vice versa. And so that vacuum that was created when my girlfriends and I broke up, I needed a person there, but I didn't know that at first. It wasn't aware, and I didn't become aware of it. So when I met this man a few years back and we started dating last year, it started filling and opening up a space that I didn't realize that I needed met. And so my husband has been incredibly supportive because, you know, we took vows to each other that he wants to be my concierge to the universe, and any need or any desire that I have, he really wants to be my concierge to that. And same thing with him. I want to support him as much as I can. And so as long as, I also call him my accountability buddy, because he's got, you know, he does strategic, he does global catastrophic risk assessment, and he's really, really good at assessing how outcomes are going to be. And so I trust him when it comes to discernment deeply, probably more than anybody. And if I am doing, like there was a point a few years back where I got into smoking pot again, and I was making bad choices. And I had dated a couple people where he said, this is bad. I don't like this. You know, he didn't call red light on me and tell me to stop. And he said, you're not making good choices. And it blew up and it ended badly with these other people. And so now that my head's more clear, he's really supportive of me in this other person, the relationship, because it's coming from a very mature, very responsible place, and it makes sense. I mean, so my husband's he's not jealous. He's not anything other than absolutely supportive. And he's unique in that way, that he doesn't need to be my one and only. He doesn't need to be the only person that, I'm in love with, or that I have good sex with, or that I have deep conversations with. His love is it's so transpersonal, but it's also very personal towards me, that if I'm interacting with somebody who is growing me and I'm growing them, and I'm a better person and they're a better person for us interacting, he's like, hell yes to that. And so does that answer your question?
Yeah, and it is unique. I mean, it is very, very unique. Um, uh, well, something that I think many of our viewers can also relate to, or probably relate to a little bit more, because yours is a really unique. It's a unique marriage, and you're a unique being, and your husband's a very unique soul as well. Trish, what is it like dating in the age of COVID? As a single woman, what is it like?
Oh man. Well, it's complicated. I mean, not that dating wasn't complicated before, but it's now increasingly complicated. Well, dating me, I think, might be also particularly interesting because I'm very direct and I'm not interested in wasting anybody's time. So I often play a make or break game. I think we've talked about this on the show once or twice before. Which weeds out a lot of people really quick. And it's, for me, vulnerability is what turns me on, and like the connection piece, like, let's just, the vanity stuff. I mean, how much time do you want to spend on this? Because I could die tomorrow. we're going into the apocalypse. Do you want to be in my apocalypse, buddy? So I guess to answer the question directly is there's a lot more to consider, and actually COVID dating is, I learned a lot from polyamory dating, is now you have to think about people's wants and needs in a very specific manner. I'm dating someone who has a household of people that he lives with, and I have to consider my actions touching their lives, right? Like I have to know that he cares about them. And if I care about him, then I need to care about them. And so I'm not putting myself in, I am putting myself in risky positions sometimes with the people that I relate to. But that means that I now have a considerable amount of time where I'm quarantining and then getting tested and then sitting and waiting for those test results. So there's slight bits of like considerations that weren't there before. And in some ways, for me, dating in the time of COVID is no longer about the physical attraction, but more of the depth of where we can go, because so much is on Zoom and so much is on phone, that there's a level of connection that now means a lot more to me because it's shifted, the physical connection. And I mean, when it finally gets to the place where you get to like hug and hold hands, like, yeah, that's super juicy and amazing. And yet there's so much that has been built emotionally and so much that has been built vulnerably, and the level of intimacy shared after those emotional and spiritual pieces that have been created is fucking amazing.
Looking at some of the comments coming in, Candy writes that she is social distancing 4.5 kilometers for 4,500 miles apart from her lover. That's interesting. And somebody named Fabregas Sa is sending you his best wishes, Trish.
Oh,
yeah,
I love that person. Thanks, Fab.
Roberta writes, the subject of intimacy in the time of COVID is of profound interest. I have a lovely 22-year-old daughter who recently graduated college and is set up developing career and life on her own in a different state. I'm observing as she navigates being young and radiating effervescent sensuality in this time. Aren't those two beautiful words together? Effervescent sensuality. Beautiful. She's just met a young man with whom she has significant chemistry. They are exploring how to be amidst this confusion and cognitive dissonance. So, mom on the sidelines here, just contemplating, grieving to a certain extent, praying and understanding that they still must live. Thank you for sharing that, Roberta. I kind of go in a particular direction right now, just because we're talking about kind of what Roberta wrote. I'm coaching a lot of couples and families right now that are struggling with how to manage COVID. To what degree do we wear masks? To what degree don't we? Then you get into the politics of it, and a very large segment of our population believes that COVID is manufactured and it's, kind of a way to create martial law without firing a shot. And then there's other people that believe, no, COVID is a very real disease that you got to be really careful of. And I'm not taking a political stance one way or the other. I'm not even going to probably reveal my perception about that. What I can say is it's tragic how many couples and families are fighting about this. And usually there's several scenarios of couples that I'm working with where the woman is younger and she wants to go dance, she wants to go clubbing, she wants to have fun, and the man is older and more conservative, and wanting more safety. And it's a few couples are really struggling with it. It's a thing. It's a real thing. And so I'm just curious for both of you. You're both brilliant coaches. What are your professional thoughts about managing that? And what's your personal thoughts about it?
It's interesting because I think about some of the basic principles just in relating in general. And, I learned so much about relating through polyamory. I don't consider myself polyamorous because, I don't know, the title's strange, but because it denotes a whole bunch of relationship and sex and the whole thing that I don't do, which is fine if you do it though. But I think about consideration and thought, and then going at the pace of whoever has the smallest legs. And so if you go on a hike with somebody, if a bunch of adults go on a hike with a 10-year-old, they're not going to just run past the 10-year-old. They have to go at the pace of the 10-year-old. And so nobody wants to have the little legs, but, in a relationship, if you can do it, you go at the pace of the littlest legs, basically. And sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes if you want to go faster, you might have to break up. So it's just where's your priorities? What do you want to do? Is it worth it? If it's not, weigh the pros and the cons. Because, if this girl's living her best life out in the clubs and she's going to just be a miserable human being without it, maybe it's not a right match in relationship. Yeah. Maybe he could stretch a little bit more, maybe not. Maybe he says, you know what, that's too much. So I would never tell anybody what to do. I would just, I don't know, go at the pace of the person with the smallest legs, because otherwise somebody breaks.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to break.
And
I'm not saying that anybody should do anything.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. That's actually a lot of the coaching that I give is that we have to be in consideration of everybody. We got to really consider all parties, and often, especially when if one person's wanting to really go for it and the other person's not quite sure, it's what we teach maybe is a no. Until it's a hell yes, it's a no, and we need to honor that in all aspects of relating. Trish, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you have a fan. Clementine is watching, and she writes, I must say, I'm a big fan of all of you, but Trish is one of my faves. I had the honor to email and actually talk to her on the phone, and damn, I was fangirling very, very hardcore. Lots of love. So,
Thanks, Clementine.
So with that, yeah.
I remember that conversation. We got to some real clarity there. I love, again, empathy first. Empathy is the place that I go first. And I'm just going to echo both what you both said, is that, if you're dragging someone through some risky behavior, it's only going to create resentment. And like, if I don't honor someone's where they're at, if I don't meet them where they're at, then it's just going to create a whole lot of crunchy disconnect.
Yeah.
And I could be like, hey, Scott, I mean, here. So in this experience with this person that I'm dating, like, we had 3 dates where I couldn't even touch them. We had to stay 6 feet apart to honor the boundaries of their household, because knowing the two of us, we had been like, oh yeah, whatever. But we needed to show up with the people with the shortest legs, as as Roxy said, is like, these people over here, they want to be really safe. And is it should I just show up and be like, oh, your safety doesn't matter to me, my needs are way more important? Like, what a dick move that would be, right? Like, that's just like a really rude thing to say or do. And that's not the way that I want to cultivate any relationship, regardless of whether it's sexual or friendship or in COVID or out of COVID. It really is like, wow, I see your value for safety and security and hygiene, and I want to honor all of those places there. So really, like, slowing it down, honoring it. And then, I mean, if I'm so impatient to have some of these needs met, then there's a different conversation to have. Just to echo what Roxy said, it's okay, well, how do we meet those things? I mean, don't get me wrong, whoever your client is, I want to go dancing too. I totally want to go dancing. I totally miss, like, lots of things about being a millennial and like doing fun, interactive, like going to parties and hugging multiple people in one moment. Like, oh my God, whoa. And that's just not where we're at. So you can debate and wrestle with reality, or you can be okay with what is and figure out how to meet your own needs and, negotiate with the other people.
Beautiful. I agree. There's something I want to kind of mention, and that is when dating, because I obviously am coaching people that are dating. It's really important to talk before you take the next step, what that means to you, what meaning you assign. Like, before you kiss for the first time, what does kissing mean to you? Certainly before you sleep together, what does sleeping together mean to you? Right? What does this mean? What's your interpretation? Because so often people are embarrassed and afraid to talk about it. And they do it, and maybe they do it when they're under the influence. That's pretty common. I've seen where a vast majority of first time people connect, there's some substance that's in the bed with them. Um, and then there's different interpretations and different meanings of what it is. So just remember, you got to talk about it before you do it. Any next step, any next stage. And I think one of the things about COVID is it is slowing us down. It's it's like so many of our distractions have been taken away, and we are not able to go to a lot of places that we used to go to. And so we're spending a lot more time at home, a lot more time, hopefully, really reflecting. Okay, life is slowing me down. COVID is slowing us all down. Hopefully, when we slow down, we're more conscious, we're more aware. So, anyway, that's just a little thought I wanted to put out there.
More present.
More presence. Yeah. So, back to the presence. So, of course, presence sounds wonderful. How do you practice presence?
You know
Yes.
what I did?
What?
I made a fucking choice. Just like that. I was like, okay, so I've got my husband, and I learned how to not miss him because he traveled a lot in the beginning of our relationship, and I would cry and he would go away, and I wasn't used to being without my mate. I'd never done long distance before. And so to have my partner gone often, it took me years to finally not miss him. So I stopped missing him. So enters in this new lover a year ago. And when I leave him, I just miss him so much. And so it's been the past 3 months that I've gotten to see him, we traveled to see each other very safely. I just was crying for a week or 2 weeks after we saw each other. I was just a mopey mess, and I didn't know how to be present. And then this trip that I came back, I was on the airport, and I was like, fuck, I'm in this situation where I put myself here. You know, I'm in love with two men. We're on other sides of the country, and I created the situation. Why am I crying about it? What's wrong with me right now? How do I fix this? And like, I have the vision for the relationship with this other man in my head. He's new to polyamory, so he can't figure out how it works quite the same. And so I thought, okay, for me to hold the vision for this, like to hold the maypole, I have to be present and really centered. Otherwise, the relationship's just gonna melt away in all my tears. Because if I'm not holding it, right, and he's barely able to kind of look through the telescope and say, okay, I can kind of see what you're seeing. And our relationship's working, and he's getting a handle on it. And I thought, how am I gonna get myself present? And I just went, oh, I'm just gonna make a choice right now to do it. There's no practice that needs to be done for me right now. I just need to make a choice. It's as simple as, you know, I like to use extreme examples. If somebody said to you, if you can't choose to be happy right now, I'm gonna cut off your child's arm. You would choose to be happy right now. You would find a way to make it happen. And I think most of the time, not to be judgmental or anything, myself included, we can be lazy about that and be like, oh, I can't shift it. I can't change it. But honestly, as humans, we can change our behavior instantly. And it's not even a month-long or a 10-year-long practice that we have to do. It's literally just using willpower. My friend messaged me. He said, how did you get so present in this situation? What did you do to shift it? And I said, I used my will. Mm-hmm. It's really simple. You know, if somebody said, I'll give you $1 million if you can just forgive all of your enemies right now, most people would forgive their enemies, and they would do it a long lasting, because you have to really actually do it. But there's no work that needs to be done. It's literally just a choice. You just flip the switch. So there's some things that are easy to flip the switch on, and there's some things that are a little harder. I would like to say tell on myself. Today I got into a little bit of a two teenage girls arguing, and there's a woman in my life who we kind of grate on each other sometimes. And I'm thinking to myself, and I'm talking to her, why can't I just flip the switch with her? What in me has chosen to not just do that? And so some things are easier to flip the switch on, but that's how I get present. I just make a choice.
Beautiful. I just want to riff on that for a minute and then turn over to Trish. There's two ways to do that. One is gratitude. I think the best way to shift out of being cynical or being depressed or being discouraged or looking at what's funky, it's just always, no matter where we are, no matter what our situation in life, there are things we can be grateful for. So just gratitude, 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 and it feels better. It just feels better. So a big pitch for practicing gratitude. And there was something else I was going to say, and I lost it. So I'm going to turn over to Trish for a minute. Trish, let's talk about sex. Let's talk about relationship.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. How I get present. I do a lot of embodiment practices. Dancing is one of my favorites. But if there's something coming up emotionally, I've been practicing running the empathy tool. Like that's my core practice every day. Anytime something comes up, like I just spoke to this lover right now, and like he called me at a really weird moment, because I was just like, I just got the news on the news, and I was like, ah! And I had like I was melting down, and he caught me in this moment of meltdown of like, oh my God, I'm actually having fear about my female reproductive rights now. And I got to just talk through that. Like, okay, the thoughts that I'm running, all these, like, whether, I mean, and I'm going to take it from the news to like a realistic situation of like, oh my God, I have these, you know, maybe it's jealousy or maybe it's fear around a course story that I've ran a zillion times, or maybe it's God knows what it could be, that I'm running some painful thought, and just being able to drop into actually not attaching to the thought, but really looking at the feelings around it. Like, I'm afraid, and what I want is safety and connection. And so then being able to share from that point, that drops me into my body. That drops me into presence with the other person. Then I get to ask for that level of vulnerability and connection there. And if that doesn't work, then I'm gonna throw a tantrum for a little while, and a contained tantrum, or dance around, or do something that gets me back in my body. You know, I do want to, can I move this conversation a little bit in some
Yeah,
direction?
absolutely, absolutely.
So as a sex coach, I've been doing my practicum hours with a bunch of people, and I'm finding myself really surprised at the level of disconnect that people share within their body. Like they share in their body. So when they're having sex, or when they want sex, they're not able to actually ask for what they want, but they're ashamed of their wants, or they're afraid to explore with themselves. It's a really interesting, like I'm stepping back and looking at it like, oh, people want connection, and people want physical sex, and they want release, and they want to be that level of intertwined with another person. And there's so much that holds them back. I'm going to pass it because I have lots of other things to say about that.
I'll take it for a second. Um, I think it's always important for us to look at, what are we collecting evidence for? And how often are we practicing being present to what is? How often are we judging what is, that it needs to be different somehow? And what do we collect evidence for? And again, I see this a lot as a coach. It's something, honestly, when I'm working with couples that are struggling, I'll ask certain questions to see, are they collecting evidence, each person collecting evidence to prove that they can work it out, and that this person's trustworthy that I'm with, and that I want to love this person, and we can be a healthy relationship? Or are they collecting evidence to support their fear, that this person's going to hurt me, this person's going to screw me over, this person can't be trusted? And discernment, absolutely, very important to have discernment, but not to be approaching it through the veil of past pain that then causes us to be out of presence and collecting evidence to support a negative belief. Right? So just want to mention that, because it's an important tool that obviously I teach quite a bit, and it's helpful, because ultimately, when we are collecting evidence to support our fear, we're probably going to have a self-fulfilling prophecy there. And it's Roxy's turn.
Oh, I just think that I love the self-fulfilling prophecy. I had that moment today. Anyway, but I love, Trish, that you were talking about embodiment, because I noticed when I came back from this trip and I decided to be present and not be sad for no reason, because I'm going to see this person again, and just be present to the beauty that's around me. There's been a couple times where I was in the middle of something and I started thinking, oh my God, I miss him. And what if he breaks up with me because he can't see me, and all these things, and what if? And I thought, oh, wow, I'm not even in my body right now. I'm just spinning around in my head, and I'm not even present as to what I'm putting in my head. I'm just letting this weird story spin. And so I would pause and get back into my breath and into my body, and use my eyes and look at the beauty that's around me. And when I actually get present to my brain, I can choose my thoughts. And I'm going back to your thing, Scott, the beauty of the longing. And I would look at there's longing there. That just means there's love. And what a sweet feeling it is. But the self-fulfilling prophecy thing was funny, because this morning I have a woman staying at my house, and we're really, really close, and we can rub on each other. I told you this earlier. And I was playing loud music. It was not loud. I was playing music. I didn't know her bedroom door was open. So she came out this morning a little cranky, and asked to turn the music down. I apologized. I said I didn't know. And then, you know, hours later when she actually got up, she was, you know, like on the wrong side of the bed basically, and was a little fussy. And the self-fulfilling prophecy was I assumed that she was mad at me and thought that I was playing my music loud on purpose. And so she was in a cranky mood now coming downstairs hours later. And so I was on my defense. And I immediately said, hey, I wasn't trying to wake you up with the music. I just didn't know your door was open. And I wasn't even attuned to the fact that she had just woken up. So the self-fulfilling prophecy of thinking that she was upset at me, so I'm going to respond defensively, or I'm going to say something defensively. And then, of course, that's going to put her on the defense. And then she was irritated with me. And, you know, my husband's watching the whole thing, just going, what are you doing right now? Like, this was a self-fulfilling prophecy. She wasn't even upset at you. She was just tired and cranky. And it was fun to catch. I'm telling on myself right now for being very immature and unconscious. It was great. And then, you know, later she and I had made a big joke out of it, and we're good. But
thank goodness for your humanness. Trap.
Yes, how perfectly human, as Scott loves to say.
It's fun to be like that too. I mean, that's how we get to practice, right? We get to practice like choosing conscious connection.
Speaking of conscious connection, I've brought a friend of ours, Paul McFarlane, in. Paul's a friend of Love Coach Academy. Paul, welcome to our conversation. You're a wise soul. What do you have to say about sex, love, and romance?
I'll accept wise, even though it's sort of a dangerous term. Hey, remember, in an office, what you put behind you is normally your values. And there's my Osho shelf up there. And you notice I happen to be wearing a Netherlands football jersey. And the Dutch are known for their directness. And if this is truly straight talk, let's have some. Direct. Scott, you were talking about, remember, talk in advance about what you want? Most people can't do that. Why?
Here.
You got to go to the roots. You can't just trim the branches. You got to heal the roots. We, in a large sense, Roxy, you're a shining example of someone that dives in, into the unknown. We are the victims of a conspiracy of pornography and religion as partners. One goes into town, breaks the windows. The other says, hey, broken windows we fix. We have society, politics, family, culture that have shamed us in our bodies, that have never taught us about love, never taught us about sex. And we grow up with songs saying, I can't live without your love, or I want to make love with you all night long. No, you don't. You both be bleeding. These ridiculous things. Women are taught to use sex to get love. Men are taught love to get sex. Do you realize how sick this all is? Absolutely reprehensible and sick. Well, you can go from sex to samadhi. But really the other way. And if you liberate, and I mean liberate, our relationship to our bodies, and you teach what love is not a business deal. The idea that you can go into a flower garden and put your nose in every single flower you like is okay with flowers. Why can't we do that with each other on some level? Although it is true that two trees that grow next to each other for a long, long time can grow beautiful deep roots and create an immense shade for many. I'm probably not going to have that because I'm still, in my thing. But healing the roots of all this is what leads to all our misconceptions and our internal war with what the illusion of love is and what sex is supposed to be. Sex, our very nature, our very reason for being here. We can't talk about it, we can't promote it, we can't investigate it. But we all think about it.
Yeah.
So there, Dutch directness.
That was quite a bit. I'm going to mute you. There's a strange sound emitting when you unmuted. We've got not your voice. I'm not referencing your voice. It's the strange sound. But I appreciate the like 13 pieces of wisdom there. And just for a second, then turn over to Roxy and Trish. I think it is sad that we grew up in a culture where most boys, their first sexual experiences for the first like 10, 15 years of their life is pornography, which creates a very unrealistic idea of sexuality. And it's equally unfair to women. It's unfair to boys because they grow up with a really ridiculous idea about sex. And it's unfair to women because it creates this, it doesn't teach us to connect and to be sensitive and to communicate and to talk and to develop friendship first. So anyway, but that was interesting also, the last thing I'll say, interesting how you combined pornography and I'll say bad religion. Okay, I don't want to offend anybody watching who's religious and it works for them, but bad religion, definitely. Roxy, I love watching you laugh. What's going on inside of you?
I was just laughing at Paul's dramatic expression, and it was fantastic. And I mostly agree with everything that he said. And I was thinking, most testosterone bearers that I've spoken with over the years, if they could smell every flower that they came across without any consequence, they would. And I don't find that quite the same with women, with estrogen holders, because estrogen dominant people, because it tends, testosterone wants to fuck and estrogen wants to feel. And so it's not the same. But I was laughing at that. And then I was also thinking, shit, I lost it. Religion, sex, pornography. It'll come back to me. I'll be right back.
Well, you gave us a great one. Testosterone wants to fuck, estrogen wants to feel. That's a meme. I mean, there's a meme in there for sure.
So I've been really stripping away for the last few years about why people can't ask for what they want. And I just literally had an experience with someone who I'm setting up a BDSM scene with. And this person was kicking around like couldn't share. He fumbled for an hour. And I was like, oh my God, tell me what you want. Like, how do I know what you want? So then of course I'm like, I know you're afraid of me. I got it. And I know that there's what was underneath that is that he really wanted to be seen. He wanted to be safe. He wanted to be connected to. I mean, the physical aspect of it doesn't really matter to me personally. It's really the level of intimacy that he's willing to allow. And talking about the level of intimacy, not on the physical level, but on the spiritual or the emotional level. So why we don't ask for what we want in sex is because we're afraid, because we've subscribed to a bunch of stories from either our childhood or our culture, and we're afraid to feel, and we're afraid to be vulnerable and open. We're afraid to be rejected. That's what I think about, also just like some pieces, Paul, that you said were really beautiful. I don't know if I exactly agree with the estrogen wants to feel and the testosterone wants to fuck. I like it's close. In my youth, in my younger years, I could pretty much say that maybe estrogen just wants to fuck too. But as I get older, what I find is that the hormonal balance, like your body drives a lot of this stuff, like your animalistic body, and it's the mind and the spirit that runs a lot of the withholding or the holding back kind of stuff. So I don't know where I was going with that.
Yeah, and I want to clarify something, that I'm not saying that men want to fuck and women want to feel. I'm saying the actual hormone testosterone is a driver that wants to fuck, and the actual hormone of estrogen, it wants to feel, because estrogen doesn't want to fuck. Estrogen isn't a driver. Estrogen is a receiver, and it's a feeler, and it's emotional, and it's why women have babies. Men don't have uteruses and have babies. And I don't think it's a good or a bad thing. And I'm not saying there's not a lot of women who don't want to fuck. because a lot of them do as well. And it's oftentimes these testosterone spikes that move them into that. And of course you can cultivate desire to do that as well, and you can have it as a practice, just like men can have. Or I don't even like to say men and women, although men and women is a thing, but typically like testosterone dominant and estrogen dominant people. It's interesting because I am waving my finger at y'all. I think about how there's more men in high power positions in the world. There's more men who are presidents and CEOs of things. And when I think about that on like an evolutionary biology kind of situation, I think, when the Eskimos and the Inuits went out whale hunting, the men went because they weren't at risk of losing their babies. Whereas in order to procreate and move everything along, the women needed to stay at home with the children. So just by nature of by evolution and biology, the men are in these driver positions to go hunt and get the money and get the thing, because the women stay at home and have the babies. And I understand that that's not how a lot of society is functioning these days, but it still is how a lot of society is functioning these days. And, I'm a feminist at heart in the sense of like women's rights and women's libs, absolutely, and equal rights for all. And it's not really equal. And so, I don't think it's strange that more men are in power positions, because evolution has kind of set it up that way. And, babies are important. Women breastfeed. Women have the uteruses. So we give the birth. The baby wants to be with us. There's a bonding thing that happens. And I don't know where I'm going with it. I just thought it was interesting. I was listening to a podcast recently, and it was just kind of confirming that, because I was like, why are more men in these power positions? And I don't think it's just as simple as, fuck the patriarchy and take it down and women need to be in power positions. I'm like, no, there's something evolutionary happening here that is different. Anyway, I listened to this podcast with Brett Weinstein and his wife, Heather Heying, and some of the top evolutionary biologists in the world. And it just, they put it into a perspective of just simple science. And I'm not saying that women can't be in power positions. Of course they can. Not every woman wants to have a baby. I know I don't want to have a baby. Which, by the way, I just have to say something. I got an IUD recently after lots of thought about it, and it's copper, and IUD stands for intrauterine device. And my husband said, no, it's an intrauterine divining rod. And I was like, oh, I've got a divining rod in my uterus right now. And copper, I don't want to call it a superconductor, but I'll call it a superconductor in a sloppy kind of sense. We use copper piping to put water through. There's copper, pyramids people put over their beds. Copper.
Don't do a Tesla coil.
Metal. No, oh my God. No, but anyway, that's a total sidetrack.
Actually, can I underscore something there? Going back to India, in the north of it, how's my audio? Is it better?
Yeah.
I moved it away from the Mac where the fans are late at night. They're notorious. Okay, in the north of India, you've probably seen the temples that have the erotic sculpture on the outside.
Yes.
If you haven't, look it up. Indian temples, erotic sculpture. And on the outside of these temples, tourists go there all the time to take the pictures. 3 ways, 4 ways. You can't even find out what part is going in what part, some of these. And everyone's so peaceful and calm. Yeah. But you know what? That is on the outside of the temple. Nothing like that on the inside. There's deep significance in this. If you approach the temple, body, and you're stuck at the visual, if you're stuck at the physical form, and you can't see past the or whatever, you will never enter the temple. And in the temple is the transcendent, the doorway.
Wow. Beautiful. And thank you. There is still a buzz. I don't know. You're giving us, we're getting a buzz from you, Paul. I want to mention Light Touch. Jay Mayer is watching, and Jay is a good friend of ours. And he created this amazing, wonderful thing called Light Touch, which is very similar to Tantra in some ways. And it's just all about awakening the senses and combining what we talked about a moment before, gratitude, affirmations, with awakening our own senses. You can do light touch by yourself, or you do it gently with another partner. And what I like about it, well, there's many things I like about it, but it's a wonderful way for us to connect to ourselves or to each other. Um, and it's not about penetration, and it doesn't open up the Pandora's box that can get opened when sexual intercourse takes place. And I think for most of us, especially as we get older, when we have intercourse, it becomes a bigger and bigger deal. You know, because we're no longer just exploring or experimenting. Most of the time, we're wanting to merge with somebody that really we have a heart connection with, a deep connection with. And most of the time, we're wanting to merge with somebody that we want to partner with. And so, one other thing about that, what is sexual attraction? Like when we want to have sex with someone, we want to merge with them. And usually, we're wanting to merge not with who they are, but with what they represent. They represent some form of, usually I like to ask, what are the values that that person maybe, represents to you, right? Um, and what do you imagine, like when you think of that person who's really sexy, is it their freedom, their independence, their charisma, their whatever it is? There's something about them that represents something that you want to merge with. Um, at least initially, in our initial sexual attraction. And that's especially helpful when I'm counseling someone who's in a monogamous relationship, but all of a sudden they're sexually attracted to somebody else. It's like, okay, what does that somebody else represent? What are the character strengths? What are the values? What are the virtues? And ultimately, are you wanting to merge with those character strengths because you're wanting to cultivate more of that within yourself? So, a little
Mm.
sketching there.
And sometimes you just want to fuck too.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because it's all God. And I don't say that casually, but the inside and the outside, and the inside and the outside, and the inside and the outside. Oh, you know what I wanted to say? When I don't know who was mentioning it about expectations and sex, and making sure you talk about what kissing means, and what are your expectations going to need after that? What kind of aftercare are you going to need after you make out for the first time? Do you need a phone call? And like oftentimes, even if you have those conversations, once the heart steps in, it takes over the conversation and the intellect. And so one has to, I don't want to say, oh, if you just have a conversation, you're in the clear and safe. Like, no, one has to actually look at the whole and how it's going to be in the long term, not just the short term expectation management conversation. And I'm just saying that from experience and naivety, getting into a relationship with somebody for half a decade, where there was really clear boundaries about what we were doing, but then once their heart got involved, the heart didn't care about the boundaries. And of course, one could argue, well, but love is love no matter, it just is, and that person had expectations. But it's all, sometimes it's the same, different side of the same coin. Oftentimes it's hard to separate that, especially when it's young and naive and new, or less experienced. And yeah, so I just like to caution people to be extra careful when it comes to sex love combination, because it's not clear. Yeah. I've heard a lot of people say, well, I had the talk with them, and I'm like, well, how is it now? did you plan that a few years down the road how it was going to be, or a few months down the road? I don't know if that makes sense.
I absolutely, thank you for clarifying multiple things, Roxy, especially the estrogen and testosterone. We forget that humans aren't static, that we've got feelings, we're ever evolving, emotional creatures. And it's really about talking about what your wants and needs are in the moment every time. So yeah, I mean, if you're like, I'm just having a friends with benefits experience here, and we start, having deep in-depth conversations, and we're watching these like intense shows together, and we're exploring some of our deeper heartfelt stuff, well, it's inevitable that things are going to shift. And so it really is about stepping to that person where they're at, whether you've been together for a zillion years or just, the last 2 weeks. And your people change like this. Their wants change like that. I'm hungry now, and I was not hungry an hour ago. I wasn't like starving last week, but I'm starving now. Like there's just like places, there's places to really honor and show up in constant consensual conversation, right? um as a more trained, like as a trained sex coach, as like someone who's looking at comprehensive sex education, one of my goals is to create and be on the front lines of comprehensive sex education in schools. And what's the first thing that you teach them in early childhood is just consent in touching, consent in communication. And that's what you start off as their young children. And then you can get to places like you start teaching them body, like safety and yes nos, and then you go into deeper understanding of maybe what you want out of sex. Like, what is it for you? That was like today, my client, she was like, I asked her, what does sex mean to you? And she sat there like, oh shit. Like she hadn't ever actually understood her own meaning of sexuality and what she wanted out of the relationship. And we sat there and she just burst into tears because it occurred to her that there was something deeper for her under sex that she wanted. And we got to something really sweet, that she wanted connection and longevity and reliability. So really defining some places around, what does sex mean to you? Does sex mean a spiritual connection? Does sex mean, like that person's going to be long-term, or is sex just a physical act? And I mean, I even recently had an experience with someone who sex was just like, I wanted a little bit more depth. And this person was like, not there. And my body didn't respond the way that I was hopeful it would respond. I was like, wait, what's going on here? And it occurred to me that sex to me means something else. Bye, Paul.
Bye, Paul.
Right. So it really is looking at those things and negotiating. So when I asked like, hey, do you want to like have more conversation and get a little deeper? There's just nothing. And I was like, oh, thank you for being clear about that. And we, I mean, how could we have gotten there until we had negotiated in that moment? Because it was friends with benefits, and then it was something else, as I understood that there was something more that I wanted.
Yeah, and good for you for being responsible and knowing what you want and saying what you want. And I know a lot of people, get into the victim place of saying, oh, well, they should have told me that sex didn't mean a commitment. And, ultimately it's our responsibility to know what we want, what our bottom lines are, what our boundaries are, and to assert them. And I love that you're going to, you're planning a whole curriculum to help teach people that from a young age. That's beautiful, because it's so easy to fall victim in that situation. And then once one is empowered enough to ask those questions, they never get into that situation because they're asking the questions first, which thank you for going out and doing that.
Taking responsibility, right? And then I think that, I mean, don't get me wrong, I was like, what the fuck? What is he going to do? Like, and I had my moment, and then I was like, okay, if I'm upset, like this person's just behaving the way that they're behaving. Like this is their normal MO. It's my feelings inside of me that is obviously pointing to something that I want and need. Like, it's not like it's not his fault that he can't give me what I want. So I can take ownership of that, and I can ask for what I want. And if he can't give it to me, then he's not the right one or ones. Like it's fine. We're friends. That was great. But it's not really like, I don't need to demonize him or make him wrong for, and that takes a level of self-awareness. And I think that the thing that I love most about polyamory, or theoretically what I love most about polyamory is that it takes a level of self-awareness and a self-responsibility, and also takes a level of deep care for others, like the consideration, right? And I'm not like, oh, I have to consider this person. It's not like this like big bag of like, but really considering the impact that you have on your partners when you know, when one person like doesn't use protection, or when this person's going out and dating like all these people, or like they're bringing partners home into their, you know, like new lovers home to their children. Like it's the consideration that it takes, or the understanding the impact, and finding ways to communicate in that level of juicy, honest vulnerability, that rawness, right? That's what I love about it.
Yeah, I found that monogamous folks with kids have a better understanding of how to be considerate in multiple relationships, you know, when I'm talking to them, or it occurs to them more because they have the kids, because it's the closest thing to polyamory, because it's a, you know, you have to deeply consider a family. Because I know a lot of monogamous folks that are more considerate than polyamorous folks, and it's the monogamous ones who have children and multiple children that are more considerate. And then this is just a broad stroke generalization. I'm not saying all monogamous people with kids are very considerate, or that all polyamorous people without kids are inconsiderate. I'm not saying that. But kids is one of the things that I framed for this lover that I have. I should give him a fake name. Senor, call him Senor, or Bob. So when Bob was trying to figure out, he's like, how am I going to fit into this world with your husband? You already have a husband, and you have a, you know, this primary partner you spend life with. And I said, I do have a husband. He, you know, he is a primary in a sense, but we have a amoebus, you know, non-static, as you use word, relationship, where we're open to things shifting and changing, especially based on the nature of his work. And, you know, I like to people. And I said, imagine if I had children, I wouldn't be able to just move across the country with you. You'd have to come get used to my kids. And so I often use kids as an example when trying to explain polyamory to someone who's never experienced it. Because people with kids understand that concept, that you can't just up and leave. You can't just have someone, you don't just bring somebody in the house without considering how the kids are going to feel.
Good points.
And exactly. So the level of, and it's not the, like when you have kids, like it's not necessarily a codependent where you're like a codependency consideration, but an actual consideration of someone's well-being, of someone's heart, of someone's like, how's that going to impact their life in the forward, and how that looks like. Absolutely.
Oh God, I get so vomitous when I think about the amount of polyamorous people that I've talked to that are like, oh, I don't want to go codependent and consider their feelings. And I'm like, you have to. It's not called codependency. It's just called being thoughtful and considerate. And it's so important. I mean, I went out to visit this man, Bob. I like calling him Bob. And he's got a whole company that he runs. And, you know, he works with people, and he works with all these women that are his, you know, his CEOs of this company and his assistants. And I'm coming in as a new person, and they're not his lovers. Like, he's been monogamous his whole life. And I came in with the thought of like, hey, I'm coming into these women's territory. And I told them, I said, hey, I'm the new kid on the street here. I just want to honor and acknowledge the, you know, the long-term friendship and work relationship that you guys have. And I want to be supportive. And, you know, I know there's that whole, and so it's like, it's not just being thoughtful and considerate when sex is involved with somebody else. It's the whole thing, even friendships. And I just, they were so sweet about it, and just they almost seemed grateful that I was coming in kind of knowing my place and just being considerate of their feelings. It was so sweet. And honestly, I didn't learn that till polyamory. So
I mean, see, that's the thing, is like there's a difference between codependency and being compassionate and loving to people. I mean, like, oh, I'm going to step out of myself and care about Roxy and Scott. Like, oh, they're counting on me for their survival needs. They're counting on me to say what I promised to do. And if I can't show up in that way, I'm just going to tell them that I can't show up in that way, and maybe we can negotiate something else. Now, codependency is where you literally abandon your own needs and like, oh God, I have to meet that other person's needs or they're not going to love me. So the difference between that is like, I mean, being considerate, like I don't have to stomp around on someone's feelings, and I don't have to stomp around on you, Roxy. Like I don't have to do that because I want to develop a deep, loving relationship with you. And for me, love looks like consideration. And I'm not going to ask you to abandon what you need and want. I'm going to ask you to like consider the things that are important to me. Like time is really important for polyamorous people. Time is really important for monogamous people. For me, I mean, for Scott, I know that. So it's just like, honor someone's time, their energy that they're putting out. Like if they spent time writing you a card or a thoughtful email or called you just to say, hi, how you doing? Hey, I just saw that RBG died. You might have some feelings about this. You want to talk about it? Yes, I do want to talk about it. Thanks for calling. Like that's very considerate, right? But it's not abandoning oneself to be loving.
No, but I abandoned myself in a codependent way to be defensive this morning. And I was thinking, for those of us who have been codependent, when we, okay, so this woman came down this morning. She was a bit fussy, and I've normally like in the far distant past, I've placated to people who are fussy and been, oh, I'm so sorry, and how can I fix it? And so somebody who was being kind of bitchy, I would want to make it okay, and I would apologize, and I would put it all on me because I can handle it, and I'm the martyr in my community, and I got this. And so then when I take that to the extreme, instead of just letting her be in her feelings and be frustrated that she got woken up, I overcompensated because I used to be codependent. And so then I was like, went on the defense and was kind of intense as opposed to just being neutral. Kind of like when somebody's learning how to say no for the first time, they don't learn right away how to just nicely, thoughtfully say no without a charge. They're like, no, it's this opposite end of the spectrum until they realize, oh, I don't have to say no like that. But in the beginning, we do oftentimes have to say no like that to pull our power back and then back it off and say it. I'm going to just call it more maturely, just a responsible, mature no. Doesn't have to have a charge.
Exactly. That's one of the things that I ran through with my client today is that we ran through the deeper understanding of what yes and no feels like in her body. And it was really profound because she did the thing, the normal sex thing where I'm a woman, I'm going to use sex to get love. And that never works out for her. I was like, oh, surprising. What are you wanting? And well, I didn't say that. Of course, I was kind and compassionate in that moment. But I mean, how many times have I done that? I've done a zillion times. How many times have either of you done that? Like, oh, if I do this thing, then this person will. But we ran through this yes and no, and we ran through the subtle energetic and emotional distinction between what it feels like to say no to something you want, which is really powerful, as well as saying yes to something you don't want. And she's like, oh, I've got this one down. I know how this one feels. And I was like, well, take note right now. Take note of what that looks like. Because when you're saying yes to someone and you're totally not, yes, like that's literally just creating less self-trust. And that person who you're loving or wants to show up with you also can't trust you now because you're just totally abandoning that place. And it sucks when we do that with sex. It sucks because sex is so juicy. It's so good.
Yes, I have been in many a threesomes where a little thing felt off, and I was so glad that we had a preliminary conversation of your fears, boundaries, hopes, desires, and if anything feels off, we're going to stop, because then we're not having this kind of weird sex wondering if are they happy and what's he thinking and what's she thinking, and we all just pause and say, oh, let's talk about, I felt something weird, is everything okay? And everyone says, oh yeah, everything's fine, but then one person says, I still feel some contraction in my body, what's happening? it takes that one person to just be honest and attuned. That's my word for the year, is attunement. And it's nice when our partners are able to tell us exactly what we want. That's great. And it's even better, I think, when we can attune to them, because like you said, Trish, it is hard to be vulnerable sometimes. Fear of rejection is real. I mean, I have that all the time and I just push past it. So yes, attunement in all directions.
Calibration, like absolutely. Oh, it really does look like, I mean, okay, so I'm all fumbling now. Woo, this is super vulnerable. Woo, I'm getting all hot and sweaty. My palms are sweaty. Okay. I had multiple threesomes with my ex-fiance, and at the end of our relationship, he said this to me. I don't know, like, I don't think you ever wanted a threesome. It was always so fucking awkward. And I was like, those girls didn't like me at all, right? They were getting to me to get to you. They were coming through me to get to you. Like, did you not get that piece? Like, I was down. They didn't like me. They weren't interested in me at all. So what made it awkward was, I mean, women and a lot of men, women are really in tune with other people. Like, if I know that person's like, I'm just having sex with Trish because I really want this other guy, like, I mean, I'm going to feel that. And so I told him, I was like, hey, those people didn't like me at all. And the look on his face, he was like, oh my God, you're right. And I was like, wow, that was years of this. So then I have this wildly beautiful experience with my partner at the time and another woman. And we had this really in-depth conversation, what it was going to mean, what we wanted, boundaries. And what happened during it is we had this checking in woven into this experience, and it was stunning. It was the most healing sexual experience that I've had. It was transformative, because I was like, oh, maybe I was the one that was kind of awkward and I don't want threesomes, which is not true. It was that this person wanted me, and they wanted my partner, and he wanted her, and he wanted me. I mean, it was just like this really dynamic place where it felt, it was aligned, it was attuned, and we calibrated in the moment. We calibrated before and in the moment. It was stunning.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
As a teaching example, because I think you sharing this will help whoever's listening or support it. So your boyfriend said, oh, I didn't think you liked, your ex-boyfriend, I didn't think you liked those threesomes. And you said, no, I was in it. Those girls didn't like me. They were just using me to get to you. Back then, obviously you were different. What made you say yes to that, knowing that they weren't into you?
Oh, yeah. Codependency, self-abandonment. That I, at that moment, felt that if I didn't do this thing, then he wouldn't love me. I know. And yeah, there were lots of things, because I also, there were a couple people that we played with that I was really into. And I was a yes. I was like a fuck yes, like yes. And as we were playing, I know that he was a yes, and he was a yes to her, and he was a yes to me, and she was a yes to him. And I was a yes to her and him. So the place that it fell apart is that she wasn't actually that into me, but I was still a yes. And it always came out weird. It always came out feeling like, unfulfilled, like there was something missing. And I was like, why do I feel gross about that? Like, why do I feel all like awkward? And then I would talk to him, and he would be like, yeah, something was off. And I would talk to her, and she's like, yeah, something was off. And it really occurred to me way later, after I deciphered what it was. Like, and we'd had multiple threesomes with people that I was like not really that interested in, that he was like super dogging after. And then there was, I mean, it was really interesting. We also never had any threesomes with people that I wanted to have threesomes with, which was I should have been like, if I was smarter then, if I was more in touch with like my my truth and what's real and what a value of balance and equality, then I probably would have been like, maybe that's a red flag.
You think?
Oh, shush.
Well, thank you for sharing your sweaty palmed vulnerability. I think that's really sweet and generous.
Oh.
It was really generous of you to share that.
Honey, I got sweaty palms for you all day.
You do?
Yeah.
Is that some kind of like stroking off joke?
No, that wasn't a joke.
Are you serious?
I was totally serious.
Oh, you were serious?
Yeah. That was me flirting with you right now.
Oh, you were flirting with me? Oh, I'm blushing.
Oh.
I thought you were making a joke like, I got sweaty palms for you all day. Because, you know, if you have sweaty palms, you can jerk someone off better. Because it's wet. Unless they have foreskin. Then you don't oftentimes need lubrication.
Even then, it still needs something. It feels much better when it's wet.
No, you know, I know a lot of guys who are not circumcised that they like to jerk off without lotion, and they like to be jerked off without lotion just because the foreskin comes up and down over. Anyway.
I mean, this is straight talk. We can talk about that. I know I've known a few, not a lot. I've known a few men who were uncircumcised, and those men liked it lubricated, but they could stroke it without having it because they had the foreskin. Is this okay for you, Scott?
Yeah, wet.
You're really silent over there.
Wet is always good. I'm taking these dissection classes, and I'm on my 7th one, and we actually dissected a penis, and it was I can't remember exactly what the teacher said, but he was talking about foreskin and saying that I shouldn't misquote him, but he was saying an uncircumcised. Oh, I'm gonna wait to get the quote and say it because I don't want to misquote this guy.
Okay. Every time I go into the clinician,
I'll send it to you guys.
Thank you. Anytime I go into the clinician, though, speaking of jokes, I have to make trashy, like clitoris and vas deferens puns because I just can't control myself while I'm in there. There's a vast difference between. Oh, it's so bad.
You're funny.
I know. I just because they're just looking at people's genitalia all day. So sometimes I'm like, maybe I should just throw in a little like, genitalia humor and, get them going for the rest of the day. Like,
I think that's great. They are probably happy about that. You probably make their day.
Oh yeah. Plus the people that I live with, like we just joke with words constantly. So those are really fun words to like, inspire people to enjoy and use them. Like, we don't see, now I want to make jokes. Okay. I'm like, why don't you just put these words in your mouth?
That's funny.
But I mean, like using, so some people don't really like to use the words like penis or clitoris or, the technical terms. And I'm like, why? These are really amazing words. I love the slang of it as well. But even just talking to some of my clients, it's hard for them to say dick, pussy. Dick. They're like, oh my God, I can't even say the thing down there. And I was like, down where?
Right, down where? There's 3 different teachers I'm doing dissection classes with, and one of them, his name is Gil Headley, and he says he doesn't like to refer to the genitals as genitals because it makes it so clinical, and then it kind of takes the sexuality out of it. And so he calls them the pars intima, the intimate part. So it's Latin. And I just thought it was such a sweet, poetic way to talk about the pars intima, the intimate parts. And it was just, I don't know, I can't remember, I don't know what the Latin is for genitals, but I one time mined Facebook, it was probably like 9 years ago, and I said, give me all the names for vulva and vagina. For those who don't know, like obviously the vulva is the inside, or the vagina is the inside and the vulva is the outside. But I got so many names. I have them right here if you want to hear them. But anyway.
Oh yeah. Give us at least 15.
You want me to read off this list? Okay, tell a story while I pull it up.
Okay. I mean, just to give everyone else in the comment box, what are your favorite words to talk about your genitals? Can I even? Is this okay, Scott? Like we're pushing some
Yeah, it's
buttons
great.
over here.
No, you
Love
guys
it.
you're on a roll. I mean,
Okay, so
what you
I'll.
find is when people name it, actually.
Okay,
I've always thought it would be really a cool book to have the photograph of the person and then what they've named their cock or their pussy, right? Um, because I think, it's like,
Aaron.
Are you ready? Aaron? Okay, are you
Aaron.
ready?
I said my
Musk the
pussy's name is
person.
Aaron.
Oh.
That's a joke.
Okay, here's the list. I'm just gonna read them off. This is what Facebook
Okay.
gave me. This is all the people. Pussy names: honeypot, perfect, noogie, juicy papaya, home, cookie, kitty, petunia, happy spot, party in the pants, punani, dessert, vagina, ching ching, slush puppy, little muffin, grapefruit pulp, donita, biscuit, the butterfly, love mound, tootie, cosita, Brittany, pink parts, mango, the feminine entrance, divine entrance, cha-cha, crotch, God light in the human form, honeypot, cave of sacred mystery, secret treasure, love nest, cherry picker, Kit Kat, source of life, the jewel, cherry, little, insert your name, roses, yoni, her powers, garden of life, sheed, sheath, my lady, my girl, Tweety, nappy-headed dugout,
Tweety?
hoo-hoo, expensive real estate, temple, sanctuary, holy abode, lotus patch, ton of love, papa, pocketbook, slice of heaven, glory hole, axe wound, little oven, pucha, cunt, love garden, home, pink taco, flower, fruit cup, cupcake, candy, sacred spot, papa cherry.
wow.
Wait, you polled your friends.
Yeah, I told Facebook.
I love your friends.
I mean, I don't know if they were my friends. These weren't on all of my friends. This is Facebook. So yeah, I put posts on Facebook like 8 years ago, and this is what people came up with. And the axe wound was the most disturbing one.
There's other ones. Those are actually nice ones. I've heard other ones.
Well, these ones really. I liked though when it got down to the my tantra people started kicking in, and they were like the feminine entrance, divine entrance, God light in the human form.
Yeah.
Like, all right.
I love the word crotch. I love that word. It just makes me laugh so hard. Like crotch, crotchety. I try to use crotchety a lot. And then I also love the word cunt. I'm totally reclaiming that.
Cunt? Yeah, so I'm all up on cunt.
I have these earrings that I can't wear them very often, but they're scrolled out. They're beautiful and it has the word cunt in it. Okay, so let's, off the top of our head, since we gave honor to the vagina, how many penis words can we come up with? And I'm kind of expecting people in the chat and on the comments to like give us some things as well.
I'm gonna ask Facebook shaft. I am bad at these kind of games. I get on the spot shy.
Oh, okay. Penis, dick, spear,
Rod.
rod. Oh, that's
Love
my
wand. Love wand.
love. Oh,
Wand.
yeah.
Wand of light.
Wand of light.
Boner.
Chubby.
Ooh! I had to explain some chubby to someone recently. It was fabulous.
You know how I learned that word? I learned the word chubby because I was 19 or 20, and there was my best friend at the time, and I had a couple threesomes with her and her boyfriend. And one night I didn't want to have a threesome with them or sleep in the same bed, so I went and slept on the couch, and there was another guy on the other couch, and he said, "Can we cuddle?" And I said, "No, because you're going to want to be sexual, and I just want to sleep." And he said, "No, I'll be fine." So I said, "Okay, we're spooning." And then he starts stroking my thigh, and I said, "Dude, we're not doing that." And he goes, "Come on, but I got a chubby." And everything in my system just stopped. I was not annoyed that he was stroking my leg. I was like, "What the fuck is a chubby? I never heard of that." And he goes, "Like a half hard on." And I was like, "Huh, thanks for the education. I'm going to go on the other couch now." And I close my eyes, and like 5 minutes later, I feel this presence above me, and he's standing there with his pants down and his dick out, in my face. And I said, what are you doing? And he said, well, can I at least just spank it in your face? And I was like, no. And this was not people that I like, this was a random, strange occurrence in my life. Anyway, that's how I learned the word chubby. So we ushered him out the door and then I slept.
Yeah, you did.
Chubby.
Goodbye. Bye,
Half hard
weirdo.
on.
So that's exactly what, God, where was I? Oh, I was at this Palm Springs thing that I was doing, and they had never heard the word chubby, and I was like, oh, it's when you're not fully hard, but it's like there's blood pumping through it and it's getting thicker. It's just like a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, a half hard on. I love it because it's kind of sluggy. I call it slug sex because it feels like I'm getting fucked by a slug kind of sensation. I'm like, give it to me sluggy, give it to me sluggy style. You need extra lubrication for that one though. But it's nice because it's a mushier feeling as opposed to a harder dick.
Yeah, I like that too. There is something really special about inviting a man to grow inside of you. There's something really special about that. Like it's a very sweet, loving, sluggy.
Well, for me, it's just like I'm like, oh, it's like I'm getting fucked by some giant slug. Like I'm not even inviting him to grow inside of me. I'm just like, this is sluggy.
I love you.
Animal realm.
Oh my God, I had this experience. I can't believe I'm going to share this. So there's a lot of, so I have this group of friends that I call my family, and they like to push the taboo and we like to push our own boundaries together. And it's really merely for the sake of asking why we're uncomfortable with it. And it's not about pushing through, like abandoning ourselves, but it's really about, just seeing what's underneath the fear or the concern. And so I asked someone to brush my teeth during a 12-handed massage. And they were like, well, do you want a vibrator too? And I was like, I guess so. And it was such an interest. It wasn't like particularly arousing or orgasmic or sexual inherently to me, but it was so much sensation. I was like, I didn't even know what to do with myself. I was like, oh my God, there's hands and they're like touching me. And then the vibration in my mouth and the vibration on my pussy. I was like, whoa. Ah. It was
a vibrating toothbrush.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And then so she wasn't pushing very hard on my teeth, so it was like tickling. I was rolling. It was really sensational.
It sounds sensational. Wow.
Yeah.
Electric toothbrushes are a lot anyway, just in your mouth. Wow.
How you feeling?
I'm just feeling. I was feeling grateful and juicy and present. It's feeling really present. Is present a feeling? My physical body feels present, and my awareness. Yeah, I just feel happy talking to you. I like your teeth a lot. You started talking about brushing teeth, and I like your pointy teeth. It's cute.
Oh, I really appreciate you sharing your love and your connection and your truth.
Well, I will attunement and presence. Those are my truths right now that I'm embodying more of. So
yeah,
it's really yeah. I'll save that for another talk. But yeah, it's been sweet to be on with you and Scott tonight. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I want to just drop in with what, again, kind of the theme of the show was, or the topic of when the heart opens, the presence must deepen. And I thought that was really beautiful.
Yeah, I was just losing my mind. I was like, how am I going to handle this long distance relationship? Because when I thought about it, it was polyamory. It was multiple relationship, but it was also long distance. Like I'm in love with someone who's thousands of miles away. I can't be with them. What the fuck am I going to do? But I think it just cross applies to, if you've had a husband or a wife or a girlfriend or a partner for X amount of time and then you meet someone else, and you go into the relationship consciously and thoughtfully, it's like one has to stay present with what's in front of them. Otherwise, they're missing out on the moment. And so I don't know. There is this very real, I told this man, I told Bob, I realized I just need to be present. And he said, so basically you're just gonna, when you're here, and when you're there. And I said, that's not quite that cut and dry. I'm not just so present that I'm acutely aware that I am not with you. And in order to keep myself sane and really enjoy life and what's in front of me and be grateful, I'm gonna be attuned to what's here. And he said something sweet. He said, he goes, I think it's easier for me this time, because it was harder for him last time, I think. He said, because I'm taking all of the joy that you brought into my home, into my life, and into my people. He's like, and I'm just spreading it out everywhere I go. I'm just spreading your joy. And I was like, oh, I said, thank you. That's a good visual for me. I should spread your light and joy that you left me with. So that was, I think I'll end there.
I'm really like conversing right now over your love with Bob. That's really sweet.
Bob. Thank you. And I'm normally not so private. I'm really open about everything, but I happen to be with two people that are extremely private. So I'm honoring them because they have the shorter legs in this.
I love that you named him Bob, because it has an acronym for me. Battery operated buddy.
Oh, that's nice.
Which is a vibrator,
I like
right?
that. Of course, yeah. Or a toothbrush.
Sometimes dual use.
That's fun. I like that. I'm glad I picked Bob.
So every time you said it tonight, I've been like, hee.
That's funny.
Scott, you've been really quiet for a little while. Like
Listen,
extra quiet.
You know, I get plenty of time to talk on my shows. So, you know, I've been delighting in the two of you, you know, and you really are two of my favorite human beings of all time. A little earlier, you were talking about kindness, and I just want to acknowledge that I was going to mention that you're two of the kindest people I know. But what's also cool is that you are kind and you're fun. You both really are fun people, and fun people aren't always kind, right? Fun people often, it's like all about me and the next adventure, the next high, the next thing, right? But you both have a lot of fun in life, and you're both really kind and considerate. And I just really want to acknowledge it's a great combination. I think that's why I'm a little bit in love with both of you. Yeah.
A little bit in love with you too, Scott. And Roxy.
It's mutual. Yes, mutual.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. I want to acknowledge that most of the people who watch the show watch the replay. So thank you to those of you watching live. Welcome anybody watching the replay. And next week, we're going to have a really interesting straight talk. We are going to have activists and police officers engaging together on Straight Talk.
That sounds so good.
So it's going to be really interesting. And then 2 weeks from now, Mark Sims is coming back. And Mark's got some really interesting stuff. And I know we have a lot of fans of Mark Sims. So Roxy,
I love Mark Sims.
Thank you. Oh, Mark is great. And thank you everybody watching.
Speaking of a man who's really kind and compassionate,
God.
like, wow, he has incredible empathy and compassion. So it's like, dang. You can find Roxy through Roxanne De Palma, she said. You can find me on Embodied Happiness or Intimate Transformation on Facebook. You can find Straight Talk soon on their own Facebook page.
And tomorrow night, I want to do a quick plug for Saturday Night Alive for the Global Peace Tribe. We've got an amazing show tomorrow. We've got Matt Kahn, Carolyn Miss, Lynn, Stephen Dinan, some of my favorite musicians, Larissa Stowe's coming back, Elijah Ray, even Swami Beyondananda, and our favorite magician, Jeff McBride. It's like an all-star show. And it's all about creating peace in the world through unity. So tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, definitely join us for Saturday Night Alive for the Global Peace Tribe. And I love you both. I look forward to my next connection with each of you. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.